Hi gang, Rob here. It is the morning of 10 December 2015 and I thought I would just bring you a little all-American classic eye candy this morning. What you see in front of you are three of the most famous, most iconic manly implements in the history of mankind. Specifically in the history of the United States of America. At the top we have the iconic hand cannon, the Smith & Wesson Model 29 with the 8 3/8 inch barrel, -2 variety with the pinned barrel, recessed chambers, made in the mid-late 70s in beautiful nickel plate with the Goncalo Alves handles. My prettiest gun. In fact, I think it's the prettiest gun ever made. Oh my goodness. Whether you are a man, a bear, a moose, and you need to be stopped, this baby will get the job done. So that is that. On the bottom we have the most classic lock blade folding knife of all time, the Buck 110. This one 1980 vintage in 440C with the walnut scales, brass frame, squarish corners, not like the later models. As you guys know, if you watch this channel, I purchased this from a well cared for collection, and it doesn't get carried much. It just stays pristine. Firmly in the midst of that group is this knife. And man, this belongs to my sharpening customer, Matt. And having this on the TheApostleP channel is, you know, this is almost like, it's like having somebody send me Dirty Harry's revolver, you know, to do an action job on. To have this knife in for sharpening is an honor. And, well, let's talk about why. What is it? This is the Randall Made Model 1. And as you are gazing upon it, I'm going to tell you a little bit about this knife as I know it. Randall Made Knives is located in Orlando, Florida, and has been since the mid-1930s when Bo Randall, I believe, who was a farmer by trade, started making knives. And, you know, like most sort of earthy folk who start making knives so they can have tools themselves. You know, a couple of Bo's buddies saw his knives that he made from files. I think you can see the resemblance. They you know, asked him if he'd make them one, and word got out to American soldiers in the late 30s, and he would get mail requesting that he make them knives, and they would be addressed to Knife Man, Orlando, Florida. That piece of information comes off Randall Made's website. And then what happened? Soldiers got them in their hands and war broke out. And America went to war, saved the world in World War II, and saved the world with a large number of our fighting men carrying these Randall Made Model 1 knives on their hips. Why did our soldiers love them? Well, because no matter what theater of battle they were in, these knives were useful for things soldiers do. You know, they would open cans of food, they would chop wood, they would split wood, they would slice up your veggies. If you're in a pinch, and let's say you're battle rifle was jammed up and your sidearm ran out of bullets and you had a bad guy coming at you with ill intent, you could swing this, you could thrust this, you could slash open abdominal cavities, spilling entrails all over the ground, killing your assailant with lots of reach, 7 inches of blade length. So this Randall Made interpretation of the Bowie knife with its 6-inch long swedge that goes all the way up to this thumb depression, its long graceful clip, and its deeply hollow ground primary bevel became the tactical companion knife of choice for U.S. soldiers for, oh gosh, what is it now, almost 80 years? The profile is classic, the quality is unquestioned, and they're still making them. I think we're on our 3rd generation of Randall's making knives in Orlando, Florida, made to order, custom fixed blade knives for soldiers and citizens alike. On their website now, they have a very well laid out ordering system, an interactive catalog, if you will. You can pick your steel, pick your model number, pick your crossguard, pick your handle material, pick your butt cap. And for somewhere between the high 400s and around $700, you can have your very own Randall Made, handmade, custom knife. As long as you don't mind waiting a little bit, I suppose. So why is it so great? And you know what, before we get too deep into it, this knife belongs to Matt, and he inherited this from his dad, and he remembers his dad using this knife unknowing of its legend during their family camping trips as a kid. So I don't know how old Matt is, let's say he's 30. So that would put this knife somewhere in the 80s or 90s of production. It doesn't look like it saw too much duty because this is the original Randall Made Knives leather sheath, which is an impeccably constructed leather sheath, and it looks like it's in pretty doggone good shape. So I don't suppose this knife got used for much else except camping trips, and it looks like it was well cared for. It has a little sheath pocket with a fine India stone made in USA, and it looks like it's been used, oh, maybe just a couple times to touch up the knife. And there's a little evidence on the knife of being sharpened with, well, let's say, not great skill. And you know, so time came for this to become Matt's knife, and he thought since he was sending me some other stuff, he'd just throw this old fixed blade in the shipment and have me put an edge on it. And guys, for a big old 1/4 inch thick fighting and survival Bowie, it's got a pretty impressive edge, I must say. And you know, in his email, Matt said, you know, this doesn't need to be a slicer, just put an edge on it that makes it sharp and strong. And as I surveyed the knife, I thought, man, I've never had one of these in before, first one I've ever seen in person. I thought, well, it's going to be pretty hard to make this thing sharp and strong without making it a slicer, because this hollow grind is so deep. It's not a small radius hollow grind, so it doesn't, you know, have a lot of internal belly, but it does come down to a very nice thin profile behind the edge. This is sharpened at 20 degrees per side with no real micro bevel, just enough to deburr it. You know, that's not a that's not a skinny slicing profile, 20 degrees per side. Look at that thing. I believe this to be in 440B steel, which for a long time seems to have been the steel of choice for the larger Randall Made knives. They also used some 440C and occasionally some ATS 34, which is the chemical twin of 154 CM. I doubt that this knife is in that steel. I think it's probably 440B. Stock removal and sharpening was pretty easy, so it should be a very tough and very easy to resharpen steel. So let's see how that sharp and strong edge came out on the Randall Made Model 1. Sorry, Matt. I'm afraid it just had to be a slicer as well. Did you see that, guys? Uh-huh. Oh, my goodness. This thing probably push cuts. Maybe not. A little too obtuse for a push cut, I guess. But not by much. It is a laser. This is the 7-inch Model 1, by the way, with a 5-inch handle. Just 12 inches, 1 foot long overall. Oh. So why is it so great? Why does it excel as a fighting knife and a survival knife? A knife that a real soldier who's getting muddy, cold, wet, dirty, and hungry and needs to kill some bad guys would want to carry. Well, I think it's pretty obvious, isn't it, in its fightability. Somebody, I don't know if it was Matt or Matt's dad, had sharpened the clip on this knife, and I did touch that up just a little bit. It's pretty obtuse, but you think it'd back cut? I think it would. Just enough of an upswept tip that it would bite into flesh pretty well. Enough belly for slashing, and this full thickness of steel extends almost 6 inches out onto the blade. You think you could do some prying with this as well as impaling? I think so. A generous crossguard top and bottom to block opposing blades from coming up on your hand. A superb saber grip. Gotta swing this around. A superb reverse grip, that 5-inch handle, plenty generous, with just enough contour and curve to maintain good control, but basically it's a tapered stick. And what am I going to say next? In fact, I won't even say it. Audience, you take this one. God made the human hand to hold on to a... For those of you who are new, the audience said, a stick! And it's beautiful. Looks like Matt has attached some OD paracord to use as a lanyard, probably if he was going to use it in a chopping roll, just to hang onto the knife, or a brush clearing roll. There's two schools of thought on that. Some guys say if the knife slips out of your hand, it's better off just going to the ground rather than hanging on your wrist and coming down and slashing your leg. But it will keep you from losing it, that's for sure. This one is handled, I believe, in walnut, almost like a burl walnut. And I guess there are collectors who would say that the walnut handle is the most classic handle material for a Randall Model 1. Brass crossguard and pommel. And the knife is, well, it's not surprising, is it? It's a rat tail tang. And then you can see the outline of the brass nut. That would have had a slotted fitting for tightening down on the threaded rat tail tang. And then when the knife is finished, all that's ground flat and flush. Just beautiful. You can see some black phenolic washers in between layers of brass in the handle and in the butt, or in the at the crossguard and at the butt cap. Let's take a look at the work, shall we? Now these knives are all individually hand ground. Randall Made Knives has been forging their own steel for a lot of years, I believe. And you know, the Randall Nation of fans you know, will argue all day long on forums that Randall forged steel is better than rolled steel because Randall forged it. You know, well, you can make your own conclusions about that, but you know, it is beautiful and it is classic. One of the most iconic American outdoorsman's tools / weapons in our history, as I said before, and what an honor to have one on camera. Here's the cool thing. One of the cool things about this knife, I think. If you don't have, let's say, $475 to $700 to buy a Randall Made Model 1, but you really love them, long ago, the Randalls made this pattern available to a company called Blackjack Knives. And their thinking on that is, go ahead guys, if you can make it credibly and honor the pattern with high quality, you go ahead and make it. Because we sell every single one we can make for more than twice as much as you're going to sell the Blackjack Model 1.7 for. So have at it. And who do you think, guys, who do you think was at the helm of Blackjack Knives when that deal went down? Well, I'll give you a hint. If you buy a Blackjack Model 1.7, which is the 7-inch version of the Randall Model 1, remember, this is a hollow ground knife, so this main bevel is concave. Well, on the Blackjack version, the knife is convex ground. And they generally come in A2 tool steel. Randalls are made in 01 high carbon steel for the non-stainless version, and like I said, 440B, sometimes ATS 34. So convex ground out of A2, a knife that looks just like this one in profile, with a similar variety of handle and pommel options. Yep, you guessed it. That was our buddy Mike Stewart, now of Bark River Knives, back when he founded and owned Blackjack. Blackjack now in its sort of second or third incarnation, still making the Model 1.7, and since Blackjack doesn't manufacture any knives, who do you think might make that Model 1.7 for Blackjack? Yeah, you got it. Bark River. So if you can't afford $500 for your Randall Made Model 1, you can buy a Blackjack from a variety of online purveyors for just under to just over $200, depending on options that you choose. So thank you, Mr. Stewart, for making this classic available to us in very high quality for an affordable price. And thank you, Gary, Randall, and your sons for continuing to make knives in Orlando the old-fashioned way. And thank you, Matt, for bringing me this knife to sharpen and share with the rest of our viewers. You know, old John Fitzen, those of you who are TNPers may remember that name. He makes a few knives. He's a little bit of a flake, and a lot of the things that come out of his mouth are a little wacky. But one thing he says about his philosophy of making knives, he probably learned from being a student of knives like this and companies like Randall. He said, all my knives have fightability and survivability. This one sure does. Look at that long choil, long enough to let you get your hand forward on the knife and use this nice big 1/4-inch wide shelf for doing fine work. Just nice how the top of that crossguard finds the highest point in the crook of your hand and lets you do that with comfort without getting in the way. Man, it's just a beautifully designed knife from the mind of an average American with good old American ingenuity. You just can't beat that. So I hope you enjoyed seeing it, guys. It's been a joy bringing it to you. Grace to you and peace from God our Father and the Lord Jesus Christ. And remember, the Word and Matt's Randall Made Model 1 are sharp.